guys, and welcome back. This is the third episode of MTG-Profits. My name is Devin, and I'm here joined with my co-host, Andy.
Hey, everybody.
And what we're going to discuss here is basically all about Magic, a little bit buying and selling. Our goal is to sort of enrich and enlighten you a little bit about buying and selling cards. And that's our primary push. We're going to try to get some news in there and some other interesting tidbits as well. And I think in this episode we're going to talk a little bit about how we go about doing it.
Yeah, I think now we'll jump back into kind of financial foundations. We had news last time, so let's get back to the foundations of finance and all those other things kind of surrounding it are just as important as buying the actual cards.
Yeah, I think one thing that we're going to try to be very good about is try to be somewhat transparent with you guys about the actual process, and we're going to, as time goes by, sort of get into more details about how we buy these cards, how we sell them, where do we do these things, and to that end, today we're going to talk a little bit about where do we buy cards and how do we find the best deals. And sometimes your price point really matters. If you get a good deal, you can really make it work for you long term.
Exactly. I think we're both very sensitive to price. So I definitely hate paying a high price for cards. I'm very cost sensitive. I want to get as many cards as I can for the lowest amount. I mean, I suppose everybody does, but
sure.
It's almost incredibly unlikely that I'm going to buy a $20 card.
Yeah, no, I can't remember the last time I've done that, except in the case of certain speculations. So.
Exactly. Yeah. Very, very, very rare. I even just a couple dollar card, I hesitate at.
Yeah, for most of the decks that I make, and I think too that may be part of the way that we've been playing for so long. We're primarily casual players. Our primary goal is really casual kitchen table Magic, and I think we've been at it for so long and we make so many decks that it's not unusual. I think probably. Oh, gosh, I mean, just in my collection alone, I probably have 100 decks.
Yeah?
That's probably not an overestimation. And unlike a lot of, sort of more I guess, current Magic players, they'll make a deck and use it and deconstruct it and sell the parts off to make their next deck. And they're constantly sort of moving into the new meta, the next standard legal deck. And that's never really been my focus, and I've always really enjoyed sort of putting these things together, and then when new sets come out, kind of revisit, like, oh, look at my discard deck, or my green stompy deck, or my the slivers, or whatever.
Sure.
Revisiting these older decks that I've known and loved for years, and when something new comes out, some new little juicy piece of tech, it's always a pleasure to see something that fits into your old deck. So
exactly.
A lot of them are still in a certain state of use. Although now it's somewhat problematic just keeping them straight, just to remember, what would be good in those old decks. So that's the challenge now, is one of overabundance.
Exactly. I mean, the card pool is so huge at this point. I mean, where do you start? And what's worth updating? What's not worth updating? Which card is better? Which card's worse? You're not going to go all through the cycles of testing it and all this sort of stuff. There's just not enough time for all that.
Yeah, that's right. Which sort of brings us to, I guess one of our points, and I'll put this question to you: is when you are going to make a deck, what is your primary source for card information? So not necessarily purchasing of the cards, but say if you're making a goblin deck,
okay.
What is it that so say you wanted to put together a goblin deck. Where are you going to go to find your goblin cards?
Well, that's a good question. To you, the actual purchasing of my cards, I'm really going to be doing a lot of research into it, because I want to find the best deal on my cards. So I'm already going to have what I believe was my deck list constructed for that deck.
So how do you go about finding your deck list? I guess even going back a step.
Even going back a step. Well, usually, in a lot of cases, I'll center around a certain card that I like. I will build around a certain card it's interesting to me in some fashion. Maybe it's a unusual enchantment, or a certain legend, or a certain artifact. That'll kind of be my starting point for the deck. In most cases, either a certain card or it might be a certain theme. Or I might go for a tribal theme. It might be, all artifact, or just some certain mechanic that I really like, and I'll just focus on that. And typically, I try to lean more toward standard and modern card sets for whatever the theme is. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Because I need some way to limit it. If I'm going for all of Magic in the entire card pool, that just gets overwhelming and is really just too much work for me to sort through everything.
It's getting a bit overwhelming.
And too expensive, honestly. I mean, if I was to really go back to older sets to purchase cards, some of those are very pricey. And while they may be better cards, it's just not cost effective. So usually I start with, like I said, either a certain card or a certain mechanic or a certain theme to build around.
Excellent. So once you've got your theme all sort of, you got your theme selected, and now you're thinking, all right, now I want to build a deck list. So say for the sake of argument, you're going to make a goblin deck. You've decided, all right, I'm going to make a goblin tribal deck. Now, what is your favorite, website to use to search for those goblin cards? So, are you going to use, one that I like a lot? I use Scryfall a decent amount. I like that as a way to search for my cards. There's a couple of them. There's the Gatherer. I don't know if you use that at all.
Originally I used to use the Gatherer. I used to use the Gatherer all the time. I used the advanced search on the Gatherer, and, it worked okay. I mean, it wasn't the best in the world, but, I could find the cards that I want. But, recently I've really been turning more just to what you mentioned, the Scryfall, and that seems to work really well. Scryfall.com is what it is. And
I like that a lot.
Yeah, it works out really well, and I think Scryfall actually existed before, and then they also just recently took over MagicInfo.com, I believe it was.
Yeah, that was going to be my number 2 choice. That's you hit the nail right on the
head.
No.
I countered
your. You countered my spell.
I went for the counter on that.
But I used to use that a lot as well. Yep, and I'm not exactly sure what happened to the Magic Info. It kind of fell out of favor with me. I sort of quit using it ever since I started with the Scryfall. And I haven't really been back to the Magic Info very often, in all honesty.
I know they had an announcement on there, I think it was just before they changed over, that they were being, I think, purchased by Scryfall, or they were being consumed by it in one fashion, or merged into it. There was some sort of actual integration there. Yeah, that there was a takeover on that. So
okay.
It was noted on their site.
Excellent. I was kind of unaware.
Yeah, I just noticed it, just recently. Because this happened within the last 3 weeks, maybe? And we're talking, I guess, within August of 2018. So.
Oh, very good. Very good. Well, interesting. I didn't know. I mean, I knew that was one of those ones that I had used a lot. It sort of fell out with me. I do use the Scryfall quite a bit. I find that it's one of the easier ways to just type in something and start pulling information, pulling cards and looking at the cards. I really like to see the card sort of when I'm searching through these things. So.
And I love having the advanced capabilities too. I want to, because I'm usually searching for very specific things, either specific text.
Comes into play, enters the battlefield, things of that nature.
Exactly. Yeah. Half the time I can't remember exactly the wording or exactly what the card was. and I can kind of picture it fuzzily in my brain, maybe the artwork, but I just can't actually recall the name of the card.
Yep.
So, I mean, those advanced searches are invaluable.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's so yeah, it sounds like we're essentially on the same page. So I'd be curious to what our listeners use as well. I'm always interested in other search tools that are useful. So it sounds like since we're sort of almost on the same page in that regard, we don't have any we don't have any alternate picks for each other, but that's fine.
Yeah,
sometimes
there's many others. I mean, we can definitely talk about that, and I'm sure we will talk about it in future episodes. Some of the other tools out there, because there are some other ones that are still functional.
Yeah, useful. Excellent. Yeah, I used to use the Gatherer as well. I found the Gatherer was problematic for me because I wouldn't find some of the cards that I knew existed. And I don't understand if I wasn't searching things properly or if I wasn't clearing the search correctly. But there would be cards that I knew were out there and I couldn't find them. And very frustrating. So I essentially moved away from that and don't use it really at all any longer. So that was my experience.
You would think that Wizards themselves would make the best search engine, being access to all the content and all of that. But
you would think,
I guess that wasn't their focus. I don't know.
No, apparently they're focused on a lot of things they probably shouldn't be. They seem to focus. They sure as hell don't focus on card quality. They don't,
No.
It's like they don't. They're not worried about cards warping. They're not worried about cards being printed improperly. But they seem to be interested in pushing their agenda, which is somewhat strange. But so. But I guess so that sort of carries us forward. So now that we've got our deck ideas, we're thinking, all right, well now it's time to buy some cards. What do you look for in a buying location? What is your what is it that you're looking for, and why do you choose your? And I've got a couple of places that I go to buy cards, and I'll go over that. And
sure, I mean for buying, this is where it gets kind of time consuming. Coming up with a deck usually isn't too bad. And usually when I go for a deck as well, I overestimate everything. I'll put a lot of things on my list that, for lack of better sense, are maybes. These are maybe cards that I want to include, but I haven't fully finalized. They could fit, they might fit, I'm not sure. So usually my list is longer than what it'll actually end up being.
Yep,
but when I actually go to for the purchase, this is where it takes me a lot of time because I bounce around between several different sites looking for the best deal. Yeah. And in the end, I'm going to go with whatever site I can get the best deal on the majority of cards. I could go for, 3 cards from this site and 4 from the other site, but for me, it's easier just to go to one place and get it all at once and not have to worry. And if I can get a good deal on the majority of those cards on the site, that's
where you're getting it. Yeah.
So, I'll look at a lot of those kind of big name sites. There's the Card Kingdom that's been around a long time. The Troll and Toad, I've gone there to buy some purchases. Channel Fireball, I go there. Sometimes just for a laugh, I'll look at Star City because there's no way I'm buying anything from them because they typically are the highest of everything.
Yeah.
So that's one to avoid.
I hear you on that. You're right. Sometimes it's tough to find all the cards you want, and I find it very frustrating. Sometimes I'll have like 80% of the deck from one place. And I'll use my LGS a lot too. Cape Fear Games, they do a pretty good job as well.
I've been impressed with that store, and their site is fairly easy to use, and the deals and the costs are fairly reasonable.
Pretty fair.
Yeah,
I think they do a good job. Sometimes their selection isn't as good as Channel Fireball, but I do find that they do a good job, and I know they're. I know those guys personally. They do really an excellent job, and they
kind of cool to support the local.
Yeah, when possible, that's sort of my go-to.
Yeah,
I go right there, and And so I do like that. My other storefront, I guess, large storefront of choice probably would be the Channel Fireball. I have used them, and it's funny, they're all the way on the West Coast. I live on the East Coast, but they do seem to have a large card selection, and periodically they'll have good pricing on sealed product as well. So sometimes I'll order some sealed product, and they'll have some free shipping options as well. But so those are the two stores I use. I do tend to avoid Troll and Toad. I've had some bad experiences with them, and I'll go over that because I think it's somewhat important and noteworthy in the ways that I've been screwed over by the troll. But so essentially, historically, I've had issues where, so I would have there would be a few cards that I would look for, and a lot of times, and I'm prone to this too. Sometimes I'll just get stuck looking for cards, and I'll just peruse the websites, and I'll be looking for deals, and sometimes I'll see what appears to be a really good deal, and I'll say, wow, that card's a really good deal, and I'll say it's a card that's, say $4 or something like that in other places, and then I'll see it at the Troll and Toad, and it's like $1, and I'll say, wow, and they'll have 6 copies, and I say, you know what, I'm getting all 6 copies of this, and then what'll happen is a day or two later, instead of getting a shipment confirmation, I'll get a shipment confirmation for a partial order. So I'll say they'll have 6 copies of that, and I'll buy a couple of copies of other things. So say I've spent, say, $30, but the thing that would have originally prompted me to buy from them in the first place was those 6 $1 cards that were worth $4 a piece. So what would happen is I would get a partial shipping confirmation saying, part of your order has shipped. Unfortunately, the residual portion of your order is currently out of stock. And damned if it wouldn't be all 6 of those cards that I wanted in the first place.
Oh, jeez.
And, so the reason that I ended up buying cards, like I will keep adding cards to my cart until I reach that $25 for free shipping. Yeah. And I'm a sucker for that too. I'll constantly find cards until I get to that free shipping mark. But, so which I'm sure everybody does. But man, is that frustrating. So then they would end up refunding me the $6, and I got a bunch of cards that I wasn't as enthusiastic about, and then to add insult to injury, I'll check back like a month or two later. Those same damn cards are on the website listed for $3.50. So, and I've had that happen to me twice, not once, but twice. Oh, wow. So I have essentially stopped shopping,
So you never actually got the card, though.
Never actually got the card. Yeah. But in a way, it was funny. It was, like I said, it was like a funny situation where I felt like a card was either going to spike or it spiked, and I was buying it at a cheaper price, getting a great deal. Then they didn't ship me that card, and then that card magically became for sale again on their website at a later date. So, and burn me once, that's fine. Burn, twice. Sure. Twice is more than I need. And
do you think that was just like a timing thing, or just actual some?
Honestly, I'm not sure, and I'd be curious to see if any of our listeners have had a similar experience. Yeah. I'd be curious to see what other people feel about that, because I'm not buying cards from them 3 times a month, so that I'm buying cards from them historically maybe once every 5 months. Sure. It was not a common occurrence, so when it happened to me more than one time, that's kind of a pretty big hit ratio of unfortunate events. Yeah. So
one bonus I would say about the Troll and Toad, and I'm not familiar with. I'm sure that there's probably other sites that do this, but this is the one I noticed, is that they have a large variety of cards to choose from, but not just Magic. So I could get Force of Will cards and Magic cards. I get it all in the same order.
I do like that quite a bit.
And I think they have Yu-Gi-Oh! And a couple other different brands as well. But
yeah, it's a large card seller. So
my only complaint would be just recently I did get an order from the Troll and Toad, and I got the cards, But it didn't include a statement, a receipt of all the cards that I purchased. It was just cards.
So you had to go back in your email or something.
Yeah. I like having just a
packing
breakdown.
list.
Yeah, a packing list. Exactly. It didn't include a packing list, which seemed kind of lazy to me.
Absolutely.
Even for my own records, I'd be curious, and just to make sure that I got what I wanted.
Exactly.
I can basically remember what I ordered, but
not always. Sometimes
always.
I'll order like 50 cards at the same time, not the same card.
Yeah.
I could easily miss a 4 of in there.
Absolutely.
Not even realize it until I went looking for them for some reason.
Yeah.
I couldn't find them. But so I guess that brings me to another choice of where I purchase. Because my top local pick is my LGS again, Cape Fear Games. My other choice is and I'll use this one for more than one reason. I'll use this actually for purchasing cards, and I will use this for price shopping, and that's TCG Player.
Okay, yeah.
I think.
I wondered when you were going to mention that.
Yeah, I do like the TCG Player, and I think a lot of people do. And again, you kind of hit the nail on the head with one of the reasons why I like TCG Player. I can find lots of cards from lots of sellers, and not only Magic cards, but you're exactly right. I'll find Force of Will cards on here, and those are my two games that I'd be looking to purchase singles for. But it's great, because the price comparison aspect of it is phenomenal. So for example, I'm looking at one of your last week's pick here, the Metamorphic Alteration.
Yeah.
And there's 378 sellers of this card for this. So what I would do is I would look through here, and I'm going to find a store that has free shipping. And the trick to this, in a lot of cases, there's 2 free shipping thresholds for TCG Player. One of them is $25, and that's what they call direct ship is what they call that, or some such direct qualified shipping. The other one is when you just see shipping included. When you see shipping included, any order from that store over $2 gets free shipping.
Oh.
So what you'll do is so for the sake of argument, I see Metamorphic Alteration, and I see for 25 cents, Dead Guy Games has 20 copies of this. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and add 8 copies to my cart. And, I'm going to add 12 copies to my cart. So what's an extra $1 at this point?
Yeah, what does it matter?
So now when I go to the checkout, it shows me that I owe $3, and it's unfortunately a TCG Direct, so I have to get up to $20 or $25 to get free shipping on that. But that's not typical. So a lot of times when shipping is included, as long as you reach a $2 threshold, you're good to go on TCG Player. Oh. The beauty of that is when you enter your cart, it will show you which stores have reached that threshold and which have not. So it breaks your cart down into multiple storefronts. So you can have 3 different storefronts, and it'll say, for example, if you need to, say, shop from this seller and order more cards from them, you can click right on the cart. It says, shop from this seller, and it will take you to that seller's storefront. And then every card from that point that you search for that pops up will come from that storefront selling site. So, and then you can go back and look for more cards and basically get up to whatever threshold you need. Yeah. So that's why I use the TCG Player, because it's very easy to use. It's very easy to find other cards from the same seller to get to that free shipping threshold. And I just generally hate to pay shipping costs, so I try to avoid. Especially if I'm only buying $3 of cards, I sure as heck don't want to pay $1 in shipping, because it's 33. That's a quarter of my entire cost for that order, and so I don't like to do that unless I can get the percentage down to very low levels, like 2 to 3% or less. If I can do that,
sure,
I'll do it.
Sure.
So I do TCG quite a bit.
I guess the bonus too with the TCG Player is just quantity. If you want a higher quantity of cards, you could probably get it through TCG Player.
Absolutely, absolutely. And in some cases, it's really nice because it shows you how many copies a certain storefront has. And we'll talk about that a little bit in one of my picks later on today, because I use the TCG Player exclusively for some of that stuff, and we'll tell you why when we do it.
I think the other bonus of the TCG Player, or at least other value of it, I think it's frequently used as a price comparison point among different sites, and really as a baseline for many cards.
Yeah, a lot of places. For example, even if you're talking with other people buying and selling cards at your LGS, or even trading, a lot of times people will use TCG mid-pricing as a baseline for how much the card is worth. And it's a pretty reasonable standard. They do a pretty good job with that. So they've got good trailing price indicators. It shows what the cards have been selling for, not just what the list price is. So I think that's nice too, because sometimes if somebody buys out a card, which is less common for some of these more recent cards, but for an older card, if availability is really low and there's none available, and you have one seller, selling a Bazaar of Baghdad, and he's charging $3,400 for it. Yeah. But the actual price might only, be $2,400, and it'll show you the trailing price of what the card has actually sold for versus what the asking price is. So I like TCG Player as both a price comparison tool and a shopping location. So
absolutely.
Generally speaking, I recommend supporting an LGS whenever possible. You can't play Magic at TCG Player. You can't play Magic at Walmart or Target, but you can play at your local game store. So that's generally a good way to go. But barring that, I probably oftentimes go to TCG Player.
Yeah, I think that's a good pick. I think, just shop around. Look at the prices, compare among, different sites. I think in general, most of the time, things are very similar, but there are exceptions.
You will find some outliers. So it is important to price shop.
Yeah. And if you can save a couple bucks here and there, or if the card you really want is available cheaper here, or is more expensive there, or doesn't have the quantity that you need here, those things all count, and you really got to look and examine your options.
Absolutely. So those are my. Did we basically cover all the bases on the point of purchase?
I think so. I think we talked about some different the primary purchasing type places to go to online. I think as you said, most of this is really just online purchasing. You could buy singles and things in a store, but you're probably going to pay more than what you'd pay online. They're probably not going to have the quantity. They're certainly not going to have the selection.
Absolutely.
It really just makes sense, and the convenience of it, you just can't beat going online.
No, showing up right to your door is a nice thing.
Absolutely. It brings to mind actually one other point about purchasing cards is I've started to do this more often for high value cards. If I really, feel like working for it, eBay is a great way to go too. Because, maybe I can get that higher priced card at a little better deal than I could through a storefront. I might have to work a little bit more. I might have to look for a certain auction. I might have to try submitting some best offers for something. But for something that costs more, it might be actually worth a little bit more work for it.
It's worth the time.
Exactly. Or something, I got, recently I was looking for Sorin, I think it was Lord of Innistrad. And, I saw the price at the store.
Black-white tokens?
Exactly. And I just needed one copy, I think, of it. And, actually, no, I take that back. I needed a couple copies. But, I looked at the prices in the store and it was expensive. Versus, the prices online were cheaper, and, I found a copy of it, and, I got a good deal on it, and I just went with that. And, I'm a little bit more flexible on it, if it's slightly used. You know, I can deal with that to get the price advantage of it. Because I'm not usually using it for resale purposes or for collectors purposes. This was just more for, casual deck building. So I'm willing to take a little bit of a more heavily played card and use that for
a great deal.
For a great deal, exactly.
Yep. Yeah, I think it's reasonable. Although I will say for higher end cards, you got to be very careful. Condition is paramount when it comes to actual anything worth more than $8. Then people are going to start beating you up when you're trying to sell those cards.
If you're trying to sell it, yeah.
For use, that's a totally different animal. I totally agree with you on that.
Yeah. I'm fine with slightly used condition.
Absolutely. So do you want to move on to some of our picks for the week here? I think it's probably about time.
Just about time. I think one other note, just to mention it too, and I think you might have mentioned it a little bit at the beginning, is that, as far as the purchasing, that, we will continue and it'll become more obvious in future episodes too, that we're going to put our money where our mouth is and I guess practice what we preach, and that, the cards that we talk about and the tools that we talk about, we will actually put those to use ourselves, and we will purchase these cards, and we will report on our purchases and track them over time and report back to you. So to see that, we actually are making these purchases and following through with what we believe are the best deals and best cards to purchase.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's a good point. I think it's one thing just to say, oh, go ahead and buy this card, but actually you're 100% on target. We're actually going to be buying a lot of these cards ourselves. Maybe not all of them, but certainly a good portion of them. And we're absolutely gonna report back on our results, both good and bad. You're gonna win some, you're gonna lose some, and so in the future episodes it'll be easier to see, sort of track our progress and see how we've done. Have we done well? Have we done poorly? I think our track record will bear out that we'll do relatively well.
I think so. I think we're going to do okay. And, some of these will definitely be, in it for the long term as far as when we'll expect value back. But, we'll let history decide.
Be our judge. Exactly.
Yeah, definitely. So, I think it's time for some picks, man.
Yeah, let's do it.
So what's give me a pick here.
So one of my picks for today is actually a card that is used most heavily in EDH or Commander, and cards from Commander do tend to hold value relatively well, and it's a very sort of casual format. I myself am not super enthused about it, but people do love it, and a lot of the cards from that do tend to hold value and creep up faster and maintain their value more so than other sort of rotating formats. So some of the non-rotating formats are beneficial, and my pick for that is actually a land called Myriad Landscape. It's been reprinted recently in Masters 25 at the uncommon level. It is the only mass product that it has been printed in, other than the Commander decks themselves. So Commander 2016 had some, Commander 2017, and Commander 2018. Can't remember if any of the others, but 16, 17, 18, and also Masters 25. So the Masters 25 printing has caused the price of the Myriad Landscape to drop relatively precipitously from, I believe, the $4 level down to the 80-cent level. And so I am a buyer of Myriad Landscape at 80 cents or below, and I will buy as many as I can get my hands on, because, again, it's sort of about scarcity with this card. It's an uncommon card, but essentially the only place you can get it is Masters 25 or box sets. So the price, I think, has a pretty solid floor, and I think we're probably at that floor, at least until they reprint it again, which may be a while. So again, Masters 25, those booster packs are MSRP of $9. I don't think they have been opened as much as a lot of other booster packs that would be drafted more heavily. What Myriad Landscape does for us is it's sort of a nice thing because it is a land that unfortunately does enter the battlefield tapped. It does add void mana to your mana pool, so a colorless mana source. And what it does for us is it allows us to color fix. So you pay 2 mana and sacrifice the Myriad Landscape to search your library for up to 2 basic land cards that share a land type and put them into the battlefield. So you're paying 2, you're sacking the Myriad Landscape, and you're dropping 2 basics of your, 2 basics into play. So it's color fixing that doesn't need green and can go in any color. So it's pretty useful, and it's a card that is great for Commander. It's just a heavily useful card, and 80 cents sounds like a lot, but again, at anything at 80 cents or below, I'm a buyer of as many of these as I can get. And I think realistically, a realistic sell price, and that's another thing that we might need to start considering is buying at what point, selling at what point. So that's something that's easy to. Yeah, it's easy to get away from ourselves in that regard and just get all excited for our picks. But so I'm a buyer at below 80 cents for this card. I'm a seller at above $2. So if I can profit $1.20 per card, and again, I'm going to try to sell these in play sets. So I'm going to try to sell these as 4 ofs, things of that nature. Although Commander players don't need 4 ofs. However, this is a card that can go in every Commander deck that you have. So. If you're a Commander player, you probably have more than one deck. You're going to want the Myriad Landscape in there, just like you're going to want Soul Ring in there.
Absolutely. You said that too. It just made me think of Landfall too, dropping 2 into play as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly right. It would be great in a Landfall type theme deck. Again, great casual fun right there. So can't beat it. For 80 cents, I'm a buyer.
Yeah, definitely good.
So what's one of your picks for the day?
I'm still focusing on Core 19 here and looking through those. So there's some great ones there. My first pick is the Magistrate Scepter. This is a Core 19 artifact. It's 3 colorless. Pay 4 and tap it to put a charged counter on the Magistrate Scepter. Tap it to remove 3 charge counters from the Scepter. Take an extra turn after this one. The thing that catches me on this card is the extra turn. I mean, I feel that there's some special kind of themes in Magic and some special types of cards, and things that allow you to take an extra turn always have a certain value to it. Some of them are definitely easier to accomplish than others, but they seem like very prone and very chances of being broken somehow in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially with tokens and, putting counters on there.
Absolutely. You're doubling counters, you're moving counters. There's so many ways you can manipulate the counters. And extra turns, they just seem to me, that's another one of those kind of timeless themes that everybody wants an extra turn. There's always value in that. And this one seems relatively easy to do compared to some of the other ones that I think can be upwards of 7 mana or more to pull off an extra turn.
This is nice in the fact that it's repeatable.
Absolutely.
This one's repeatable, so it doesn't require you to sacrifice the artifact. So that's kind of nice. This is a repeatable effect that as long as you've got ways to jump up those counters on it, proliferate them in some fashion. Clock spinning, you name it. There's a ton of ways.
It made me think of Energy Chamber way back from Fifth Dawn. I have a bunch of those.
Yeah.
Every turn, at the beginning of your upkeep, put a charge counter on an artifact.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Oh, there it is,
Absolutely.
Right there. And it specifically says charge counter.
Yeah.
Well, okay, there you go.
And you're good to go.
I mean, if I had more than one, I'm doubling the rate at what I can put on there. I could easily get an extra turn, and that's
And even if it doesn't do anything else, it's going to be a big target for them to try to get rid of somehow. So they're going to start panicking, trying to kill that thing.
Exactly. I mean, an extra turn is significant.
Yeah, that's a great pick. I love it.
And the thing that I love about this too, average price right now, 38 cents. I mean, that's great for an extra turn. Possibility of an extra turn, like you said. I mean, at the very least, it's going to be a threat because no one wants to see their opponent take an extra turn.
You're darn right about that.
You know, and then maybe you're going to build around it a little bit. So now you're probably going to get that extra turn even sooner. So I think it has a lot of potential. Like I said, I think this is another one of the themes of Magic where anything that lets you take an extra turn has value.
Yeah, I think that's a great pick. You're exactly right. You can't really go wrong with that.
Yeah.
You know, I'm a buyer of that. You know what? I'm looking at the TCG player now, and I'm seeing that thing can be had for 12 cents.
Wow.
So
even better.
You know, you can't go wrong with that. You know, I'm gonna add all 12 of those into my cart from one seller right now.
I'll take them all now, dude. Save some for the rest of us.
Oh, there's a few of them out there.
All right.
But, okay. my greed is substantial, so I am afflicted.
I understand.
But
so
yeah.
What's your second pick?
So my next pick is actually a little bit of a cheater pick, and again, it's not too over the top, but it's actually it falls into the category of what I would call cheap planeswalkers,
Okay.
and specifically Summit the Tested and Dovin Bond. So they're both relatively recent.
Okay. Yeah.
They didn't really see any love in Standard. And they're not really played in any modern deck either, so they don't really have a home. And you know, the beauty of Planeswalker cards in general is they're great casual cards. People love playing with Planeswalkers. I mean, every time I crack a pack and a Planeswalker's in it, I do feel a little excited about it. I don't know if I really like the card type, and that's an entirely different conversation. But when I crack a pack and see a Planeswalker, I'm never dissatisfied, you know? And and I think that's true for a lot of casual players. And the beauty of these cards is they are extraordinarily inexpensive now. And I think it's almost impossible for them not to go up. So, you know, realistically, these cards right now can be had for about $1. So, I mean, we're talking Tybalt at his lowest, you know, and I would say both of these are better than Tybalt, and they're cheaper, you know. So, I mean, you know, if you can buy, you know, a play set of Summit the Tested for $4 and, you know, Dovin Bond for $4 and you get a bunch of these suckers, you know, I don't see any scenario that they're still $1 2 years from now. You know, it's just, I can't imagine a scenario in which that would be the case. So,
yeah.
I mean, they're just casual cards. They're fun to play with. You know, if you're in their colors and, you know, it's just, you may just happen to throw them in. You know, Planeswalkers always have to be responded to. They always give you, you know, some time advantage there. And, you know, they're just, I just think it's safe money. You know, you can sit on those, and they're not really going to go much lower. I can't imagine them going below where they are at $1 now. They really only have one direction to go, and I think it's up. And I would say, you know, I'm a strong buyer at anything below $1, and I'm a seller once we start to get above really $3. If they, you know, I'm buying as many of these as I can at $1, and I'm going to sell as many as I can at $3. And that's all there is to it. It's just, you know, it's not my favorite card. They're not the best cards, but boy, I think it's going to be hard to lose money on them.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree completely. I think these guys have nowhere to go but up, and you know, they're not the best cards in the world, but they're not the worst either. I could definitely see them increasing.
You know, it's just takes time. That's another point too. Like, especially with Planeswalkers, I think it's a safe bet that once you've reached a really low price, I think it's a really safe bet that you'll be in good shape to sell these later. Mm-hmm. And periodically, what I'll do is I'll just go on TCG Player and I will search in card type Planeswalker. And then I will just sort by price, low to high. I will see what is the cheapest Planeswalker out there. And then I'll start scarfing a few up. And, you know, it's because I just feel it's safe money. You know, if I can put, I could spend a few dollars, put them in my binder, and wait 2 years for that. You know, it's not going to break the bank. I'm not spending $40 a card, and I get to feel engaged with the finance aspect of Magic.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. The Planeswalkers always have kind of a sweet spot. They're definitely a unique card that people would be interested in.
So that's my number 2 pick.
Nice. That was a little cheaty, but not too bad.
Yeah, yes. Like I said, I couldn't decide. They were basically both about $1 to $1.10. So I couldn't really decide which is better because I consider them equivalent. So.
Yeah. That's fine.
So what have you got?
This next one, it's a little bit of a stretch one. I was kind of talking about special themes and things like that, and that definitely falls in this category. And still looking at core set 19. So this next card is called Liliana's Contract. It is 3 colors, 2 black mana. It's enchantment. It's a rare. When it enters the battlefield, you draw 4 cards and you lose 4 life. And then at the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 4 or more demons with different names, you win the game. And the reason I like this one is that alternate clause. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 4 or more demons with different names, you win the game. It's an alternate win condition. Nice. I think that also fits one of these special conditions of Magic, like being able to take an extra turn. Anything kind of unique like that. There's certainly been, I'd say, a higher frequency of these type of cards over time, these alternate win cards.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I don't think many have really, I don't think any that I'm aware of anyway, that have really ever, hit on the tournament scene or anything like that. But I think they definitely have value for that unique aspect. I think either just for the casual aspect of it or the collector aspect. But anything where you have an alternate condition to win the game, I think has that kind of unique element to it that gives it value.
I think you're right. I think additionally, it's a great kitchen table kind of thing because
exactly.
People love build around themes. Yep. That's the kind of card where people will sit there and they won't need one of them. They'll need 4 of them. That's going to be a 4 up. You're going to want to pack your deck with that. You want your alternate win condition to come up during play.
Yep. So exactly. It's a weird, these are weird cards. And I remember, I built multiple decks with some of these weird cards because I'm just interested of trying to accomplish that alternate win specifically. It was something fun. It was something different. Several years ago, like I said, there wasn't as many of these alternate win conditions.
They used to be rare birds, like the Darksteel. I forget, Darksteel Coffin or whatever.
Oh I know exactly. The
Crypt or something.
Is it Reactor? Is it the Reactor?
Oh, I can't remember.
Yeah, it's the Darksteel Reactor is one. I still want to build a deck with that because that seems so cool. Like when it gets 20 or more charge counters, you win the game.
Yeah,
hard to do.
Yeah, I've got a deck all about that too.
You look at the price on that guy. He's just been going up. Since 2013, that has steadily climbed. So, it's good. It was reprinted fairly recently too. I think in was it Battle Bond? It was one of the other special sets. I believe that reprint in
supplemental products.
Yeah, I believe it was in one of those. So my thought is, same with Liliana's Contract. It's really low right now. We're talking, less than 50 cents for that. So around 48 cents or so, or less. So, we've got a lot of demons. M19 has
a lot of low cost ones
new demons that came out. So you got all the demons from all of Innistrad and all those type series, and that's another kind of try. There's been no shortage of demons.
Yep.
So I think it's definitely possible to do. I think its uniqueness will give it some value, and I think it'll definitely creep up from 48 cents that to at least $1 at some point, if not more. Looking at even just Test of Endurance from Judgment, I mean, God, that's almost up to $9 now. I remember buying that for easily under $1 when I bought it.
Yeah, you're right about that.
So it's a little more unique, but same concept. I believe those kind of cards definitely have value.
Yeah, I think you're 100% correct. Alternate win cards are great. Again, casual players love it. And that's sort of a theme. It's like casual players buy and hold their cards. They just, as a general rule, they're not like selling them back into the market. They're purchasing their stuff and they're probably keeping it, and they're probably wanting 4 of them.
Exactly.
So, it's just how it is.
Absolutely. I think it's going to become more valuable.
Absolutely.
So you got one more?
I do. I have. I've got. This is a tough one because now I'm in like toss-up category. But I'm actually going to go for the more unique effect this time than the more obvious. But my third pick is a card called Memory Plunder. Plunder.
I do. I remember the art on it. It was like a merfolk, and he's like kind of looking evil.
He is. He's an evil merfolk. He's a black blue spell. And he was originally printed in Shadowmoor.
Yep.
And has not been reprinted until relatively recently in Commander 2017. So it was a supplemental product. He was in one of the Commander decks. Okay. So again, we're not talking about, huge supply burst onto the scene. And the Memory Plunder is kind of a neat card. It does a lot of things for you that honestly you're gonna like. And what it is it's a 4-mana instant. It's a hybrid mana, black or blue. And for 4 mana, you can cast any instant or sorcery card from an opponent's graveyard without paying its mana cost.
Okay.
So this has several good things going for it. One is that, it's an instant, so you can target sorceries from their graveyard at instant speed. So that's kind of a nice little surprise. That people it's very, very atypical for you to bust one of these out on somebody, and it is game changing in a lot of cases. And for 4 mana, it should be, but man, can it really change a game pretty effectively. Nice. So instant speed, pull out any instant or sorcery, and cast it without paying its cost. So it's great, and for 4 mana, you can really just go to town on that. And that card used to be a few dollars. It's reprinting, hammered the price, and now you can get it for as low as about, I want to say 40 cents. So about 40 cents. So I'm a buyer of this below 50 cents.
Yeah.
And I think there's probably an upper limit, but I'd buy this at 50 cents and I'd sell it at $2. That's pretty much where I would go with that. But I'm definitely a buyer at below 50 cents. If you can get it for cheaper, even better. I think we're probably at the floor for this one, and that's another thing. I try to look for things that are hitting their floor, and sometimes it's hard to do with some of the newer cards. I find that harder to do. I find I don't play as much as I need to get a very strong sense of when certain cards are going to reach their floor. So I almost need a little bit of time to pass before I get a sense for that. And so I'm pretty confident that Memory Plunder has hit its floor. We're already into Commander 2018 product. 2017 is a memory. And at this point, if you can get this card below 50 cents, I think it's a buy. And the challenge with this one is availability. And even though it's not an expensive card, it sure is tough to buy 4 ofs from anywhere. So it is just tough to find. So, but that's my pick.
Nice for the Memory Plunder. I think it is. Isn't it the Evil Sig is the...
I think so. Sig, yeah, that's right. Evil Sig River Guide or Sig...
Yeah, the opposite one of it.
Yeah, I forget what the... Yeah, that's right.
I forget what he was called. I always thought of him as Evil Sig, though.
Exactly. That's right.
Potentially the better Sig as well.
Yeah, I think the evil one lets you draw cards. So you can't do that. Yep. Excellent.
I got one more pick here. It's getting tough. These there's a lot of good cards here, and these last ones are, I'm not. It's hard to say what's going to go. I'm really torn on a bunch of these. I'm going to go though. We'll go for the El Cheapo pick here for my last one.
Sure.
And
I was highly tempted to do that myself. So.
This card, I don't know. I'm not sure. I think it has potential, certainly to go up, and I'm picking it mainly for its high cheapness with a potential breakable ability here. So for my pick, this is core set 19, and once more, the Skilled Animator. It is a blue card. It's a creature. It's 2 colors, 1 blue. It's a 1/3 creature. But its ability is great. When the Skilled Animator enters the battlefield, target artifact you control becomes an artifact creature with base power and toughness 5/5 for as long as the animator remains on the battlefield. So he's taking your Ornithopter or whatever else and makes it a 5/5 power toughness.
5/5 beater. Yeah.
So we're talking turn 3. This guy is going to drop potentially earlier. And you're coming in with a 5/5. And, maybe that's going to be your Darksteel Citadel, which is now 5/5 indestructible creature, that's coming in. I think that poses a big threat, and definitely for, an artifact deck, this would be great. It reminds me of that other card, which was in one of the other core sets.
The one that was like a giant scissors. Oh god,
it was
a recent one.
Yeah, I think it basically did the same thing. It was an enchant artifact, which made that one 5/5.
It did. Yep. I cannot remember the name. And it might be like Animate Artifact or something.
Animate Artifact.
Like that. That's something.
I picture that one too. I can picture the giant scissors.
Yeah, I can't remember. Golly, it wasn't.
But it was good. That was great. Yeah. That's a great card. You could drop it early, put it on, your indestructible artifact or some other, artifact with some abilities, and you've got a big threat very early.
Yeah.
It's going to be tough. I think this also poses a big threat early. And with enough artifacts, I don't know, maybe Affinity or some other deck type, it's gonna cause a problem.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun. And at 10 cents or less or whatever,
Exactly.
You buy a bunch of these, you just wait. You wait 2 years, and you sell them for 40 cents.
Exactly. Right now, under 20 cents for this card. I could see him getting up to, 50 cents.
Yeah.
Maybe high as $1 in the far future, but I wouldn't think higher than that.
I think it really depends on what's coming out in this next block. I guess what would be the Artifact clan or guild? Would that be the Is It people?
I guess.
Not really sure.
Is it related? I'm sure we're going to go back to Mirrodin at some point. So,
if you get some sort of artifact in standard that drops early, and then you could drop that thing on. That's how this thing spikes. If there's some sort of artifact that allows you to do this in standard and ramps nicely to this thing, So
exactly.
Because I think you're right. I think that I wish I could remember the name of that scissor.
I know it's bothering me.
Yeah,
in Soul Artifact.
It's okay. And the beauty of that one is that it's a 2 mana, 2 cost.
Mana.
Yeah. So, this fits in the same kind of deck as that in Soul Artifact does. So it's,
exactly.
I think it's not bad. I think the way this card spikes though is if something happens in standard with it.
Yep.
Some heretofore unknown. It's not something historical, but it's something more future. So we need to wait for something in standard to come out, and then this card goes to 80 cents. That's how it happens. So this is where I guess the speculation on what might come out. So
exactly, I think it's waiting for another card to really give it its push.
It's time in the sun, so to speak.
Yeah. Yep. And speaking of in Soul Artifact, its all-time low was 25 cents. For its high, it got up to about $5.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I mean, and that was a big spike right around Origins.
I think at that time the Darksteel Citadel was reprinted. I believe.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, and also Shrapnel Blast was in standard at the same time, I believe. So it was a very effective way to get a whole lot of 5 points of damage out real early. Turn 2. When on turn 2 you're swinging, for turn 3 I guess you'd be swinging for 5 damage of indestructible, and then when it loses its utility, then you're popping them into the face for 5, oh my goodness.
Absolutely.
So you're right. That's exactly what happened. It was a quarter, and then jacked all the way up to $5. And so that's kind of what you're waiting for, something like that to happen.
Exactly. I could see that could happen. He's just waiting for his moment. So.
Yeah. Very good.